Space is not silent, and what it's been saying, we were never meant to hear. For over a century, we've told ourselves a comfortable lie, that space is a vacuum, a soundless void, a cathedral of absolute silence, broken only by the gentle hum of our machines. But space has been screaming at us the entire time. The sounds I'm about to share with you are real, not metaphors, not artistic interpretations. These are actual physical phenomena. Electromagnetic waves, plasma vibrations, particle collisions, converted into frequencies the human ear can process. Scientists call it data sonification, but what they've captured is something far more unsettling than data. These are the voices of cosmic forces that dwarf our comprehension. Sounds produced by objects so massive, so energetic, so fundamentally alien that even hearing them secondhand, translated through our instruments, can trigger a primal unease we don't quite understand. We're going to descend through these sounds, from the merely strange to the profoundly disturbing. And I want you to understand something before we begin. These phenomena don't care that we're listening. They don't care that we exist. They've been making these sounds for billions of years, in the darkness, with no witness. Until now. Let's listen. We'll start close to home, with the star that gives us life. The sun produces sound, constant churning, roiling sound generated by plasma moving through its interior at hundreds of thousands of kilometers per hour. Scientists discovered this in the 1960s when they detected subtle vibrations on the sun's surface, oscillations that revealed acoustic waves bouncing through its interior like sound waves through a bell. But here's what disturbs researchers about these solar sounds. They're impossibly deep. The dominant frequency is about 0.003 hertz. That's roughly 1,000,000 times lower than the lowest sound the human ear can detect. To make it audible, scientists speed it up 42,000 times. When you listen to it, it sounds like a deep breathing hum, a slow rhythmic pulsing, like something alive. And in a sense, it is. The sun is a nuclear furnace where 4 million tons of matter are converted into energy every second, and that violence produces sound waves that travel through a plasma ocean 300 times wider than Earth. These waves crash, interfere, create standing patterns that can persist for hours or days before dissipating. What makes scientists uncomfortable is the organic quality of it. The sun doesn't roar or explode in these recordings. It breathes, it murmurs. It sounds almost intentional. But the sun is familiar. We see it every day. We understand, at least conceptually, what it is. The sounds get stranger when we venture to places humans have never seen with their own eyes. Before we leave our planet entirely, we need to talk about something happening right above your head, something most people will never know exists. Earth is surrounded by a magnetic field, and that field is constantly being struck by charged particles from the sun. When these particles interact with our magnetosphere, they create electromagnetic waves called chorus emissions. NASA's RBSP probes detected these in extraordinary detail. When converted to audio, they sound like birds, specifically like a dawn chorus. Rising and falling chirps, whistles that ascend in pitch, scattered calls overlapping in chaotic harmony. Except there are no birds. There is no air. There is no sound in any conventional sense. What you're hearing is electrons spiraling along magnetic field lines, creating plasma waves that oscillate at audio frequencies. The rising tone happens because these waves accelerate particles, which creates more waves, which accelerates more particles, in a runaway feedback loop that sweeps upward in frequency until it exhausts itself. Scientists who study these emissions describe a persistent sense of cognitive dissonance. Your brain interprets the sound as biological, as life, but you're listening to the interaction between solar wind and planetary magnetic fields, a purely physical process with no connection to biology whatsoever. It's unsettling because it reveals how our pattern recognition instincts can betray us. We hear intention where none exists. We hear music in mathematical chaos. And if Earth's magnetic field can trick us into hearing life, what happens when we listen to places truly alien to human experience? Jupiter is not a benign giant. It's a radiation nightmare wrapped in bands of ammonia clouds, possessing a magnetic field 20,000 times stronger than Earth's. And it screams. The Voyager spacecraft detected these emissions in 1979, and Juno has been recording them in unprecedented detail since 2016. Jupiter produces what scientists call decametric radio emissions, powerful bursts of electromagnetic radiation in the radio frequency range. When converted to audio, they sound like shortwave radio interference, static and crackle, punctuated by sharp rising whistles that sound almost electronic, almost artificial. But there's something else in Jupiter's sounds, something that registers as wrong. Listen closely to the recordings, and beneath the static, you can hear low, rumbling drones, sounds that seem to pulse with rhythm. Scientists believe these are caused by plasma waves in Jupiter's magnetosphere, interacting with its volcanic moon, Io, which pumps out a ton of material every second. Here's what disturbs researchers: the complexity. Jupiter's radio environment is so energetic and chaotic that it produces sounds that seem structured, that seem to have patterns. Analysis of the waveforms shows nested frequencies, harmonics, oscillations within oscillations. It sounds designed, but it's not. It's the natural consequence of electrical currents, millions of amperes strong, flowing through plasma fields larger than our entire planet. And there's another element to Jupiter's sounds that researchers rarely discuss publicly, but acknowledge in private. They sound aggressive. The sharp bursts, the sudden crescendos, the way certain emissions seem to rise and then cut off abruptly. It triggers a fight or flight response in people who listen too long. Your nervous system is reacting to something Jupiter is doing, something that's been happening for billions of years, completely indifferent to whether anyone is listening. But Jupiter is only the beginning of the outer solar system's acoustic nightmare.
Saturn produces a sound that should not exist. In 2004, the Cassini spacecraft detected radio emissions from Saturn that correspond almost exactly to the planet's rotation rate. Scientists call them Saturn kilometric radiation, or SKR. When played at audible frequencies, they sound like a low drone with a wavering, oscillating quality, like a note being bent slowly up and down, like something trying to find the right frequency. But here's the problem. Saturn doesn't have a solid surface. It's a gas giant with no fixed rotation rate. Different latitudes rotate at different speeds. The atmosphere roils and churns. There's no single rotation period that should generate a coherent signal. And yet, the signal is there, precise, rhythmic, repeating every 10 hours and 47 minutes with unsettling regularity. Scientists still don't fully understand the mechanism. The leading theory involves the interaction between Saturn's magnetic field and plasma in its magnetosphere.
somehow locked to a deep interior rotation we cannot observe directly. But the equations don't quite work. The models don't quite fit. It's as if Saturn is broadcasting a signal that reveals something about its interior structure we can't directly measure. A sound that tells us there's something down there, beneath the clouds, spinning with perfect regularity, and you can hear it, but you cannot see it. There's another sound from Saturn that researchers find even more disturbing. It comes from the gap between Saturn and its rings, a region Cassini dove through in its final orbits. The spacecraft detected electromagnetic waves in this region that, when converted to audio, sound like white noise punctuated by what can only be described as impacts. Sharp, percussive strikes, hundreds per second, thousands per second, like rain on a tin roof, except it's not rain. It's ice particles and dust grains, some smaller than smoke particles, hitting nothing because Cassini was recording electromagnetic signatures, not physical collisions. You're hearing the space between Saturn and its rings. You're hearing a gap, a void that sounds crowded, busy, full of violent activity. And it gets worse the deeper we go.
In 2003, astronomers using the Chandra X-ray Observatory discovered something remarkable. They detected pressure waves moving through the hot gas surrounding a supermassive black hole in the Perseus galaxy cluster. These were sound waves, actual acoustic oscillations traveling through a medium. The frequency? B flat, 57 octaves below middle C. To put that in perspective, that's about 1,000,000 billion times lower than the limit of human hearing. It's the deepest note ever detected in the universe, a sound that has been playing for over 2 billion years. When scientists shifted this up into audible range, they expected something simple, a low tone, a rumble. What they got was something far stranger. The sound pulses, it has rhythm. There are overtones, harmonics, resonances that create an almost melodic quality. Not a melody in any human sense, but a structure, a pattern of repetition and variation that sounds almost like it means something. This is a black hole, an object 3 billion times the mass of our sun, creating waves in gas millions of light years across, and those waves have structure complex enough to trigger our pattern recognition instincts. But here's what truly disturbs researchers. This is energy that will never be recovered. The black hole is pumping unimaginable amounts of energy into sound, preventing that gas from cooling, from forming stars, from creating new solar systems, and potentially new life. The sound is suppressing creation itself across millions of light years. You're hearing the universe being prevented from creating something new. You're hearing suppression, silence enforced on a galactic scale. And that B-flat has been playing since before Earth existed, since before the Sun existed. It was playing when our galaxy was young, and it will continue playing long after our galaxy dies. An infinite note from an object that consumes light itself. But even this is not the most disturbing sound in our catalog. There is a sound that comes from everywhere, from nowhere, from the fabric of space itself. When radio telescopes are pointed at empty sky, at voids between galaxies, at regions with no visible sources of emission, they still detect something. Static, noise, a constant background hiss that never stops. Part of this is the cosmic microwave background, the afterglow of the Big Bang stretched into radio wavelengths. That's expected, that's understood. But there's another component, something scientists call the radio background, emissions that appear to come from all directions at once, with no identifiable source. When this is converted to audio, it sounds like white noise, like static between radio stations.
But if you listen carefully, and researchers have for hundreds of hours, you start to hear things, patterns in the randomness, moments where the noise seems to organize itself briefly before dissolving back into chaos. This is pareidolia, of course, the human tendency to find patterns in randomness. We know this, scientists know this, but they keep listening anyway. Because occasionally, very occasionally, there are sounds in the background that don't fit. Brief bursts, oscillations that last a few seconds and then vanish. Signals that appear in data from multiple telescopes, suggesting they're real physical events, but with no visible counterpart in any wavelength. Fast radio bursts, periton signals, transient emissions with no confirmed source. Most have mundane explanations: microwave ovens, satellites, terrestrial interference. But not all of them. Some remain unexplained, sounds from the deep universe with no identified origin. And here's what keeps researchers listening to the background noise, to the static between stars. Space is not empty. Even the hardest vacuum contains quantum fluctuations, virtual particles appearing and vanishing, fields oscillating at every point. On some level, what we're hearing when we listen to empty space might be the quantum foam itself, the fundamental uncertainty underlying reality converted into sound. You're listening to existence, to the ground state of the universe, to the baseline hum of reality itself. And it never stops. We've listened to the sun's deep breath, to Earth's invisible chorus, to Jupiter's electrical screams, to Saturn's impossible rhythm, to a black hole playing a note for 2 billion years, to the background hiss of space itself. And what have we learned? That the universe is not silent, that it's been making sounds, producing waves, vibrating with energy across every frequency since the beginning of time. But these sounds weren't made for us. They don't encode messages. They don't convey meaning. They are the exhaust of vast physical processes: gravity, magnetism, nuclear fusion, particle acceleration, operating at scales that dwarf human comprehension. When we listen to these sounds, we're eavesdropping on conversations we were never meant to be part of. We're overhearing the universe talking to itself. And perhaps what's most unsettling is this: these sounds reveal that the universe is far more active, far more energetic, far more violent than our eyes alone suggest. The visible light we see, the stars and galaxies and nebulae, are only a tiny fraction of what's happening. There are entire spectra of activity, electromagnetic, gravitational, particle-based, that our senses cannot directly perceive. We've had to build instruments to translate them into something we can process. And now that we can hear them, we've discovered something uncomfortable. The universe is not peaceful. It's not serene. It's full of collisions and oscillations and waves of unimaginable power. It's singing, if you can call it that. Singing in frequencies that span 1 trillion octaves. Singing in patterns we're only beginning to understand. But it's not singing for us. We are listening to a performance that has no audience, to sounds that would exist exactly the same whether intelligent life existed or not, to waves that traveled for billions of years through empty space, carrying energy and information to no one. Until now, until we built the instruments, until we learned to listen. And what we've heard suggests something profound and deeply unsettling. The universe is full of things happening, constant, ceaseless, relentless activity on every scale, from quantum fluctuations to galactic megastructures. And none of it needs us. None of it is for us. None of it cares that we're here, listening, trying to understand. The sun will keep breathing, Jupiter will keep screaming, Saturn will keep its impossible rhythm, the black hole will play its infinite note, the background will continue its endless static. Long after humanity is gone, long after Earth is gone, long after our sun burns out, the universe will still be making these sounds, still performing for an empty theater, still speaking into the void. We just happen to be here to listen for a brief moment in cosmic time, to hear a fragment of a performance that has no beginning and no end. And now that you've heard them, you'll never think of space as silent again.